in the long and bloody war between Carthage and Rome. One name turned the tide of history. Hannibal Barca, in 216 BC, after years of terrorizing the Roman countryside. After crossing the Alps with war elephants and shattering expectations, Hannibal faced Rome's largest army yet, over 80,000 men, twice the size of his own. And he didn't just fight them, he crushed them. But to understand the brilliance of Cannae, you have to understand how Rome thought. The Romans were bold, aggressive, and believed in one thing above all: overwhelming force. Their generals thought they could win by marching straight through Hannibal's line, crushing him with sheer numbers. But Hannibal was counting on it. He chose the battlefield near the village of Cannae. The Roman legions surged forward, tight-packed, unstoppable, driving straight into the Carthaginian center. At first, they pushed Hannibal's line back. It looked like victory. But Hannibal's center wasn't breaking. It was bending. And as it bent, the Roman formation overextended, crowding tighter and tighter into the middle. That's when the trap snapped shut. From the flanks, Hannibal's elite infantry wheeled in. From behind, his cavalry, having routed the Roman horsemen, smashed into the rear. In minutes, the largest army Rome had ever assembled was surrounded. Tens of thousands of legionaries were trapped, shoulder to shoulder, no room to swing a sword, no room to breathe. Some dropped their weapons. Most just died where they stood. And the entire time, Hannibal watched from horseback, not shouting, not celebrating, just watching his masterpiece unfold. In part 2, we'll step inside that ring of death, where the sun burned, the air choked with blood, and the greatest army in the world learned what it meant to face a true genius of war. At first, it felt like a normal battle. Dust, shouting, the clash of iron on iron. The Roman legions had pushed deep into the Carthaginian line, believing they were winning, that Hannibal was breaking. But then, the ground shifted. Not literally, but everything felt wrong. Men began to crowd, to close, too tight. The formation buckled inward as the Carthaginian flanks began to curl around them like arms closing in a hug. A hug made of blades. They didn't realize it until it was too late. They were surrounded. The rear ranks turned, expecting support, but instead saw Carthaginian cavalry thundering back in. Screams rose from the rear. And suddenly, the noise of battle became something else. Panic. There was nowhere to go. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers were packed, shoulder to shoulder, jammed so tightly that men couldn't even lift their arms to fight. Breathing became a battle. Some suffocated without ever seeing the enemy. Some were crushed underfoot. Others simply froze, paralyzed by the growing realization: we've been trapped. Hannibal's men moved with precision. The African infantry on the flanks advanced inward, shields up, stabbing in rhythm. The cavalry struck from behind, while slingers and javelin throwers rained death into the mass. The Romans fought back, as best they could. Some units formed desperate circles, hacking in all directions. Some tried to break out. But everywhere, they hit walls of shields and spears. Blood turned the dust to mud. The sun beat down, and the heat inside the pocket of men became unbearable. There was no wind, no escape. Only the sound of dying. A sound that lasted for hours. Veterans wept. Centurions screamed prayers. The pride of Rome, built over centuries, was being dismantled in a single afternoon. And through it all, Hannibal didn't send reinforcements. He didn't need to. His design was complete. He just let the trap tighten, inch by inch, until there was nothing left. By the end of the day, over 50,000 Roman soldiers were dead. More than half the Senate's members had lost sons or brothers. It was the worst defeat in Roman military history. And Hannibal had done it without a larger army. Without siege engines. Without luck. Just strategy. In part 3, we'll explore what happened after, how Rome responded, why Hannibal didn't march on the city, and how one battle reshaped the fate of two civilizations. Cannae should have ended Rome. After losing over 50,000 men in a single day, with entire consular armies wiped from the earth, Rome stood on the edge of collapse. All eyes turned to Hannibal, to the man who had outfought the greatest military machine in the ancient world. And the question was simple. Why didn't he march on the city? The truth is, no one really knows. Some say Hannibal lacked siege equipment, that he knew his army made up of Africans, Spaniards, and Gauls could win battles, but not take fortified cities. Others believe he waited for Rome to fall apart from within, that he hoped allies would rise, that fear would rot the Republic. But Rome didn't rot. They appointed a new kind of General Fabius, Maximus, a man who refused to fight Hannibal head-on, who wore him down, denied him supplies, stretched the war. Rome, humiliated, broken, didn't surrender. It adapted. And for Hannibal, that was the beginning of the end. He stayed in Italy for years, winning battles, but never winning the war. He became a ghost-feared legendary, but isolated. Meanwhile, Rome it sent generals across the seas. It took the fight to Carthage's front door. And in 202 BC, at the Battle of Rome finally forced Hannibal into the one thing he'd avoided his whole career. A frontal fight. He lost. Carthage was spared but broken. Hannibal faded into exile. Rome became an empire. And yet, the name Cannae lived on. Not just as a battle, but as a symbol. A study in perfection. For centuries, generals from Napoleon to Eisenhower to Schwarzkopf studied Cannae. Because in those few hours, on that flat field in southern Italy, Hannibal rewrote the rules of war. He taught the world that brilliance can beat numbers. That traps can defeat strength. That the mind is sharper than the sword. But he also became a warning, a reminder that even the greatest victory means nothing. If you don't know how to end the war, thank you for watching Battle Reborn. If this story inspired you, subscribe, share, and remember. History is not a celebration of triumphs. It's a graveyard of what could have been. And few stories prove that more than the day Hannibal broke an empire. But not its will.